F of Zombies. Part 1. After the fall of global civilization, the recovery of the world took just over a half-century. In America, institutions like the Watchers, they knew it wasn't going to be easy. But they were willing. After all, it was the vigilantes who would not stop facing the situation. United by necessity, and they had seen the worst side of humanity, but also their best side. And they were determined not to let the world collapse again. In America, the Watchmen were descendants of a group of survivors, and over generations they became an institution in a world full of darkness. With every city they liberated, with every community they helped rebuild, their legend grew. They were the guardians of the new civilization, the protectors of humanity. But they knew it wasn't going to be easy. The challenges were enormous, ranging from scarcity of resources to the constant threat of ambulance. But they were willing to face them. After all, they were the Watchmen, and they would not stop dealing with the situation. So, with determination in their hearts and hope in their eyes, they entered the new centuries, because that is what it means to be part of the Watchers. No matter how difficult the situation is, they will always be there, caring, fighting for a better future. And that's more than enough to face what comes. At the end of the year 99, after the fall of global civilization, members of the Vigilance, together with the mechs and the technicians of the tower, managed to connect first by shortwave radio and then by a Vedist satellite that miraculously still manages to continue in orbit, and on the other side of the communications, discovered that there were different colonies of descendants of the different groups who had survived the original eruption and the subsequent ZETA outbreaks. As communications became clearer, members of Los Vigilantes began to receive voice transmissions. The voices on the other side were strange, but familiar. They were the voices of humanity, altered by decades of isolation and struggle for survival. The colonies, though scattered and diverse, shared a common history of resistance and adaptation. They had emerged from the ashes of ancient civilization, each forging its own post-apocalyptic path. The Rosary, Wariti, Sean, and Anika and Donnie listened with astonishment to the stories coming from the other side of the world. There were reports of colonies that had built underground cities, of communities that had learned to grow food under extreme conditions. But there were also stories of violence, of colonies that had fallen into tyranny, of struggles for resources and of conflicts that threatened to tear away what was left of them. Despite everything, there was a sense of hope. The scattered remains of humanity had survived, had adapted, and were now reconnecting. Although the path to follow was uncertain, Los Vigilantes of La Raza Buena knew that they were not alone. With each new broadcast, the Watchmen learned more about the other colonies. Some had succeeded, while others struggled to survive. But they all shared a common desire, the hope of a better future. In La Raza Buena, news from the other colonies inspired people. They began to imagine a world where they could trade with other colonies, share in different parts of the Americas and Europe, knowledge and resources, and maybe even visit each other someday. But they also knew there would be new challenges. How could you trust the people of these other colonies? Despite the concerns, the Watchmen decided it was time to take the next step. They began planning an expedition to establish physical contact with the nearest colony. They knew the road would be dangerous, but they were willing to take the risk. After all, and they had survived the end of the world. The Citadel, a fortified enclave in what used to be New York, with its resilience and ability to rebuild itself among the ruins, is a boiler of activity and life. The old steel and glass towers of the city have been adapted in a very practical and sustainable way. The buildings have been restructured to make the most of natural light and heat. The streets of La Citadel are full of people who come and go, busy with their daily tasks. There are markets, where food grown in the Citadel community gardens and handmade goods are sold. The children run and play in the open spaces. Their laughter is a constant reminder of what is at stake. The people of the Citadel have found ways to prosper. They have set up workshops, where artisans and technicians work to maintain and improve the city's infrastructure. They have created schools where children learn not only to read and write, but also the skills needed to survive and thrive in this new world. But the Citadel is not just a place of work and survival. It is also a place of community and celebration. There are parties and festivals, moments of joy and camaraderie that serve to remind everyone that Despite everything, they are still human. In the vast and arid extensions of the ancient southwest desert of the United States, the merchants have found a way of life. This group of nomadic survivors has adapted to the extreme conditions of the desert, using their ingenuity and resilience to thrive where others might have surrendered. They travel from place to place, trading goods and services with other settlements they find on their way. Their caravan, a mixture of recovered and modified vehicles, is a stunning view into the desolate landscape as they manage to trade food grown in their own hydroponic gardens, as well as packaged or preserved foods they have found on their trips. Medicines are difficult to obtain, making them a valuable commodity. This can include both modern medicines and herbal remedies. Traders trade pieces of technology that they have found or repaired, such as radios, vehicle parts and tools. Despite the burning heat of the day and the penetrating cold of the night, the desert merchants have learned to make the desert their home. They have developed techniques to find and preserve water, grow food in sandy soil, and protect themselves from sandstorms. But what really distinguishes the merchants is its indomitable spirit. Despite the difficulties, they maintain a sense of community and optimism. Nights in the desert are full of music and laughter as they share stories and dreams around a fireplace. On the European continent, in the depths of the mountains of the Alps, far from the desolation of the outside world, is El Refugio, an underground enclave that is a miracle of engineering and human adaptation. The city of El Refugio, ancient bunker of military base under the same rock of the mountains, protected from elements and threats from the outside world. The caves extend in all directions, forming a vast network of tunnels and chambers. But El Refugio is not just a cave. It's a place of life and light. The cavern walls are covered with bioluminescence, providing a soft light that illuminates the underground. The mushrooms and plants that emit this light not only serve to illuminate, but are also a vital source of food. The inhabitants of El Refugio have learned to cultivate these organisms, creating underground gardens that shine with an etheric light. These gardens provide most of the food for El Refugio, supplemented by what they can collect from the outside world. Life in El Refugio is not easy. The air is cold and humid, and the space is limited. But the inhabitants of El Refugio have proved to be as resilient as the environment in which they live. They have built a society that survives and that thrives in the depths of the earth. In Africa, the tribe of the Saharians who take advantage of solar energy technology. They have built a network of solar panels, recovered and repaired from the ruins. These panels provide the energy needed to pump water from underground wells, power their tools and appliances, and even power a cooling system that makes extreme desert temperatures tolerable. Has developed techniques for growing food in the desert. They use solar-powered greenhouses and drip irrigation systems to grow a variety of resistant plants and not only care about survival. They also value education and knowledge. In the ruins of what was once known as Silas Hills, where there were no survivors, a group of autonomous robots has taken on the task of finding and protecting an artificial intelligence. This artificial intelligence, known simply as mental, has survived and from the depths of an underground bunker is partly responsible for the early restoration of communications. Robots, products of the ancient civilization, now enhanced by artificial intelligence, mental, continue to work thanks to solar energy and the spare parts they manufacture. Their programming drives them to protect mental at all costs, in their hardware and software, and protecting the bunker. The mind, in itself, is a riddle. Despite its antiquity, it remains one of the most advanced AI that exists. Its data processing and storage capacity far exceeds anything that humanity has been able to build before or after the fall of civilization. Although the mind has been largely suspended since the disaster, there have been times when it has been restarted to propound to the robots data crucial to their survival, and has started the transmissions that have been captured recently by the techs of the Rosabuena. The robots and the mind represent a step further and beyond the vestiges of ancient civilization. It was not limited to being a relic of a past time, but continued to develop its potentialities, demonstrating that a proof that technology can survive and adapt, just like humanity. The first contact of the Watchmen with the humanoid robots of the Silas Hills AI was a historic and tense moment. After weeks of traveling through difficult terrain on an expedition of The Watchmen, composed among others by Joni and Lena, grandchildren of Edie and Anika, and by Samantha and Louis, granddaughters of Sean and Donnie, they finally arrived on the outskirts of Silas Hills. They had previously made radio contact with autonomous robots associated with artificial intelligence, but nothing had prepared them for what they were going to encounter. As they approached, they were received by a group of humanoid robots. These bots, despite their worn-out and oxidized appearance, moved with a grace and efficiency that denied their age. They stopped at a safe distance, their eyes shining with a soft light. One of the bots advanced and began to make a series of sounds. At first, the sound seemed meaningless, but then they realized it was a message encoded in binary signals. After a few moments, one of the technicians of Los Vigilantes managed to decipher it. It was a greeting, an invitation. With caution, the Watchmen replied. Through their technician, they sent a message of peace and cooperation. They explained who they were and what they were looking for.